Okay, hello, I am Sinfogel. So, this is a very new type of video for this channel. It's a first. I haven't felt the need to develop any topical discussion content for Pokémon Masters in the past, but hey, I figured it would be fun. So, this is a little analysis for the late September 2020 Datamine. I want to give my assessments on the new sync grids, the new sync pairs, and what I think it can be useful and its place on the metagame. But please remember, this is opinion, it's as valid as anybody else's opinion, so it's hearsay and please take it with a grain of salt. But the main reason I am doing this is because I wanted to try and stop the spread of misinformation. Whenever there is a new Datamine, people get understandably excited about the unit's potential. Like you just look at a new unit and all these fancy skills and how they can interact with one another, but there is always details that stop a unit from performing certain roles. And I think a big culprit of this is Kukui. For example, when Kukui is grid dropped, people thought that he would be the second coming of Cynthia because he has so many sand tiles and so many sand multipliers. But on practice, he is total garbage because he's very difficult to set up. And there's other reasons. For example, Rock Tomb is very low base power. Accelerock needs to be recharged every 3 uses, so it's impractical for a striker. And Hunter's Instinct is also an awful multiplier that is very difficult to set up. Just that kind of thing can stop a unit from realizing a specific role. And I like to think I am able to notice these details because I have a lot of experience with this game and I have used units ranging from Clay to Wolfric to 5-star gachas. So I have a lot of experience with multiple kits. And I have my credentials. I like to think that I can notice these details. So I want to impart what I think can work. Alright, let's get started with our boy Volkner. He is the first to be officially announced, so it's only fitting. By the way, I am using the Sync Grid Helper site. This is a site developed by CX, another fantastic Pokémon Masters content creator. I will leave the link to the channel down in the description. Please go subscribe to them. And I am leaving the site as well, so you can toy around with it. It's really good for planning your builds. So, let's look at Luxray's stats. The first thing that jumps at me when I look at Luxray is that he has phenomenal stats. These defenses are crazy, they are crazy good. The godly standard for a tank is to have a 200 defense and a special defense, and Luxray barely graces that, but this is more than made up through his HP. This thing has better bulk than Milotic, much better bulk than Milotic, and that is an already incredibly tanky unit to begin with. Then you have some very good attack. This is not incredible, but it's functional, it totally works. Yes, special attack, he never uses any special attack in his kit, so this is worthless. And the speed, it's below average for attack, but it can work, I cannot complain. Then you go to his kit. As a tech unit, he's oriented for disruption, but the thing that most people will gravitate towards is electric terrain. Electric terrain is a new kind of weather. Well, terrain was introduced in Generation 6. It functions like weather, basically. You set it up, it lasts for 5 turns, and in Masters, I assume it would work the same as rain and sun. We don't know, we have to see exactly how it functions, which is why speculation is bad, but we are here already, it's we cannot go back. So, electric terrain, I assume will work the same way, and it will boost electric type moves by 30%, the same as Generation 8, and it also prevents Pokemon from falling asleep, so rest in peace Serena. I don't know, we have to see, but it should as a minimum give you a multiplier for electric types. So this is weather for electric types, and it could have alternate effects. So this alone would make me want to pull for Volkner because it's a fierce. It's unprecedented to have a terrain in Pokémon Masters, and this kind of thing enables playstyles. For example, when Summer Steven was announced, his Permahail enabled Hail teams to be functional because he's a useful Ice type. Candice is also functional, but she doesn't have as much utility as Summer Steven, where he can function offensively and provide you a striker. So Volkner does the same. He's a very tanky weather setter. And unlike a weather setter like Winona, who uses flying type moves, she cannot benefit from the rain multiplier. All of Volkner's moves are electric type, so he not only provides weather, he benefits from it, so he provides his own asteroids, and that is a great quality to have. Then you got Thunderfang. It's a very weak move and inaccurate, 95% accuracy, so you will miss with it, but it has equal chances of flinching or paralyzing the target. They can happen both at once. And his trainer move, you got something that raises attacks to provide some self-sufficiency for Volkner, offensive self-sufficiency. Sure Crit, which complements with his kit. If you spy the grid a little bit, he has critical focus, so you can Sure Crit your sinks, for example, used for a massive sink nuke. His sink increases in power if the target is paralyzed, so this complements with Thunderfang very well. And if Electric Terrain is active, you can also increase your accuracy, so Volkner himself can fix Thunderfang accuracy. And the way his kit is set up so far, it's more or less for a supportive role. You spam Thunderfang to paralyze things for your sink, then you use Electric Terrain or use it first. Let's say that you have an Electric type partner, then you use it right before they start attacking to take advantage of the duration. I assume the Electric Terrain also boosts the power of his sink because it's Electric type. And if you use your trainer move right before sinking, you can sink nuke and also provide some accuracy for a partner who doesn't have great, who has issues missing attacks. For example, Lance. I am not saying you should pair Volkner with Lance, please don't misinterpret me, it's just an example. But if you give Lance one accuracy buff, he can fix, he can always connect the Hyper Beam, and those type of synergies are real creative. You can do fun things with Volkner. But see, the thing is that he's so busy setting this up that he won't really have time for attacking, so that's why I don't think that he would work great as a striker, but we'll see. As far as passives go, you got the Hostile Environment 4 and Aggravation 4. These boost the chances of paralysis and flinch respectively for Thunderfang. In conjunction with the Thunderfang's base rate, it's 41% chance of paralyzing and flinching individually. So you have great chances of disrupting your opponent either way, like getting the flinch or the paralysis, and just be a general nuisance. And you also got Terrify 1. This lowers attack by one stage when you enter the field, so it complements Volkner's natural bulk very nicely. It lets him tank the first wave a little better. So yeah, overall this is an amazing kit. Like, if you gave me this thing without the grid, I would say it's really good. It's solid. And then you go to his grid. His grid, well, at 1-5 you get all your essentials, you get MPRs and MGRs, so already doing pretty good there. 2-5 you get more tools, you get shock recovery and critical focus, and at 3-5 is where things get real juicy. So Volkner, for whatever reason, is geared towards defense. He's a very tanky unit. You get shock recovery. This thing is the healing sun for electric terrain. It regenerates 6.25% of your max HP whenever you take an action under electric terrain, and I assume it also activates when you use electric terrain, just like how Acerola activates Soothing Sun when she does, when she recharges Sandstorm. So you can get a little bit of recovery to complement Luxray's natural bulk. And also get a First Aid 4 for a healing boost, which outside of shock recovery, Luxray can restore health from any other source. So you will need to pair him with a potion user if you want to tank with him, which he's very capable of. You can also go over here and grab Electric Terrain and Refresh. You always want this on Luxray's grid because his purpose for existing is spamming Electric Terrain, just maintaining that. And getting the chance of restoring a move point for this would extend the duration for the battle, so yeah, always do this. And you can also get Electro Repulsion, and this way you get a very solid tanking kit. Electro Repulsion is a new passive that lowers damage when Electric Terrain is active, so once again playing for this field, and you get an extremely solid tank for this. I think the best way to play Volkner is alongside another electric type striker, just boosting their damage by coexisting together thanks to electric terrain. And Volkner is so tanky, he can tank so well that he goes around disrupting things, preventing them from damaging Volkner, and yeah, overall he's a really solid tank. If you want to push for an offensive role, you could also go for Turbocharge just to give yourself a bit more gauge, but there is always a Wild Charge. I don't think this is really good, but if you want to push for a Wild Charge set, you could do something like this. Always stand fast, you need to lower the recoil. Power Induction works great because it boosts your damage under electric terrain, and you also get Catalytic Cure. There's also a couple asteroids here. You get Paralysis Synergy, it's more reliable. Harry... The thing about the flinch asteroids is that flinch lasts so little. You usually want to flinch the Centermon, and they always have some resistance to flinch. They got Listen Flinch 5 or Listen Flinch 8, so it doesn't last for long, and you would need Volkner to attack the target immediately afterwards to use Harry, so I don't recommend it. And another thing is that if you're using offensive Volkner, you always want to have Electric Terrain active, because otherwise he doesn't deal that great damage. But when you are setting up Electric Terrain, you are not attacking. So there's this weird synergy where every 3 actions, Volkner has to restore Electric Terrain. So if he's your primary offense, he has to do that awkward setup with doing his actions. And Catalytic Cure 1 doesn't activate very often. It's only a 20% chance of proccing when you use Wild Charge, so this thing is not reliable. You still need a potion user to make up for the recoil. And trust me when I say this, I have used one Standfast style Hilda in the past, and it's not pretty. You are still exploding yourself with damage whenever you hit the target, because in this game you deal 3000 damage per hit, 2000, so it's just very high recoil that you're receiving in return. Even though that Wild Charge does have less recoil than Flare Blitz, it's only 20% over 25 or 30, whatever it is, but it still hurts, so I don't know. It is a little awkward to use, in my opinion. Although you do get a critical focus, this complements Volkner's trainer move. As I mentioned earlier, you sure crit your sync, and then you get 1 stage of critical hit rate. If you crit again, then you would get more critical hit rate. So this allows for some offensive self-sufficiency, but Volkner still needs attack buffs to perform well, and you still get this awkward setup with electric terrain. So I don't know, it can work, but I think Volkner works best by disrupting things. Just spamming Thunderfang, letting another electric type do the heavy lifting. But if you really want to, there is always this side of his grid that performs well with Wild Charge. So yeah, overall, really good unit. I give it an A. Let's see, we got the queen herself, Elesa Zebstrika. She was always a bit of an awkward unit because when she was released, she was custom made for Price EX. She was a physical electric type striker, which we didn't have in the past, and she basically was built for that. But as the game and content progressed, she became very outdated because Elesa's bread and butter is Wild Charge. This is the way she deals damage to the enemy, and naturally, it's a recoil move, and recoil moves in this game obliterate you because you have to deal so much damage to destroy enemies. And for Elesa, after using 4 to 5 Wild Charges in conjunction with the recovery for her trainer move, she kind of runs out of health and cannot use Wild Charge anymore and is stuck with a Spark, which is not a terrible move, but it's not as beefy as Wild Charge, so unless you pair her with some very intense potion support, it's not possible to keep spamming this. And besides the fact that Electrifying only gives you sure crit, so Elesa also has crit issues. She needs crit support, which her grid doesn't fix, but it still does enough for her to be a functional unit, so you cannot call Elesa the worst gacha in the game anymore. Maybe that title belongs to Glalie now, but that is a hot take that belongs for another video, so anyway. The Elesa grid does enough for her. It's not groundbreaking, but it's really good. At 1.5 you get MPRs and MGRs, use your typical deal. At 2.5 you get about enough for Elesa to be a great unit. This is sort of like an electric Hilda in a sense. So you got your Standfast styles. This lower recoil by 50% on any moves with a recoil tag. And for Wild Charge it has a 20% recoil tag, so with one Standfast you get 10% recoil, and with a second Standfast you get 5% recoil. So it's not that meaningful of a recoil damage that you receive, especially when you have such a beefy HP stat. And this this fixes one of Zebstrika's primary issues, which is spamming Wild Charge, so that is great. You can also go for the MGR to give yourself some move gauge, although Zebstrika is very fast as is, and also has fast track too, so it really helps with gauge. Like, you're not going to have issues if you have Zebstrika, because it just generates a gauge on its own, although you do have to give it crit support either way, unless you want to have some weird Chris syndrome where you have to use electrifying every time you want to attack. Although this is handy for sync nuking, so speaking of sync nuking, you also get inertia. Inertia boosts the power of your sync when you boost your speed, which complements fast track 2 very well. At 3-5 you can also go for a second fast track tile, but it's too far off the way for me to recommend it, so don't bother with that. But you will want to give Zebstrika speed support either way, and Skyla as usual is the ideal support because you get your speed, you get potions to fix the recoil if it gets too excessive, and besides that you can go for the electrifying Emperor Fresh, First Aid 4 for additional healing. So overall, a mini Hilda, it deals decent damage, you get your Sync Nuke, and you can also go for another Asteroid. We'll have enough energy, but if we do this, we would, yeah. And Paralysis Synergy 3, Elesa herself can paralyze targets with a Spark, but if you're doing this type of multiplier, you're better off partnering here with a tech, for example, Volkner, to paralyze things and boost her damage. The 3-5 you get a few more tools, the most important of which is Ramming Speed. Ramming Speed is a strength multiplier, more consistent than Paralysis Energy, although I don't think you have enough room to go for all of these. Oh no, you do. No, you don't. So you would have to forfeit Wild Charge, MGR, or Inertia. You want for her to go for straight damage, although Inertia is incredibly potent, I wouldn't skip it. But yeah, with Ramming Speed, you could do something like this, for example, and get a more consistent multiplier that doesn't have to depend on the enemy suffering from a certain status condition, and now Wild Charge skyrockets in damage, and it is very strong. If you pair her with Volkner, you could also get a boost from Electric Terrain and activate type skills alongside him. Overall, it's a Hilda all over again, and at 2-5 you get literally everything you could want. You don't need to go for a hard 3-5 Zebstrika grid, and unfortunately I won't be using her because I have a 1-5 Zebstrika. Somehow I haven't pulled more copies during all this time, but overall it's a strong unit, it does good damage, it's self-sufficient, heals itself, it's good, I like it. Oh boy, this is one people have been waiting for a while. The Glacia grid. So, Glacia is an older gacha. I will be briefer about her kit, but I just want people to be acquainted with her capabilities. So, she's a support, but she's very strange as a support. You look at these stats and she cannot tank. This is garbage for tanking. With these defenses and this HP, she will get blown wide open on a prolonged encounter like a full force battle or a boss Holland battle villa. Because people with lower defenses and this can get away with tanking, people like Kalem, because they have healing bursts, but Glacia is niche is spreading regeneration across the entire party. And when your healing is so passive, when it's just going to take a while for her to get any meaningful recovery from this. So by the time you regen enough health from regeneration, you're probably dead already. Because these defenses cannot tank, especially because she needs defensive support, defensive buffs. The only buff that Glacia provides is special attack. Only one use, unless you go for the Emperor Fresh, which is unlikely to happen anyway. And it's only 2 stages of a special attack, so it's an offensive buff, and it's somewhat meaningless, because your special strikers should be able to buff themselves to a comfortable degree anyway. So, the thing about Glacia is that her kit is deceptive. She is an amazing move gauge generator, because when you spread regeneration across the entire party, you are spreading 3 ticks of regeneration every round, and that makes the battle so slow. But that is a good thing, because it means that the game also has to wait for the regeneration to happen, and the move gauge is advancing while this occurs. So you have a very stally unit who stalls for time, who buys you move gauge, who also spams a very slow move on Powder Snow, which is a 1-bar move. So Glacia's true purpose in life is complementing more competent units, so to speak. Like, you want to pair her with a self-sufficient striker and a much beefier tank. She gives them some regeneration, she stalls for Glacia to give them more actions, and overall the extra healing is very nice for extra encounters, provided that she's not the main tank. Regeneration, when its duration is 8 ticks or 7, I don't recall exactly, but it's essentially an extra potion, so having that healing mitigates sync damage, it's very nice to have. And then you get the extra gauge. Attention here also calls aggro, so you can spread damage across the party with this and give your tank some breathing room, so that is also very nice. Ignore Ice Beam, it's wordless, and Glacia also has a Mega Evolution. When she Mega Evolves, she gets a little bit of a special attack and speed, which again doesn't complement her bulk in the slightest, so she doesn't tank. She also gets Last Word as a passive, so you can try and time this with Attention here just to make the enemy explode Glacia, and she will deliver a nice finishing blow to the enemy team. And you also get a Snow Shelter for some Hail utility, and Fortuitous 4, which has a 50% chance of raising any of your stats by 1 stage, so Glacia can fix herself some accuracy for Frost Red. This replaces Ice Beam when she Mega Balls, so yeah. She's fine as a utility support. The problem with Glacia is that she only does healing and nothing else, so it's a little awkward to use, but her grid does give her more options. First, she gets more tools for this role. You get the 2 tiles for Powder Snow, MGR, which I don't know how useful this is, because Glacia is so efficient at stalling for time already that you don't really need the Mogosh Refresh, so I don't know if you really want to go for this. I mean, you could if you have a horrifically slow party like Summer Steven plus Caitlyn plus Glacia. That would benefit a lot from the move gauges. And you also get a hostile environment for Powder Snow. Powder Snow is AoE and it also has a chance of freezing, so you can augment the chances, although that kind of messes up with denials. It depends on your playstyle whether you want to use that. Something what you could do with Powder Snow is give Glacia the Defense Crush 2 Lucky skill, and it would proc with Powder Snow, and it would give you AoE defense drops and turn her into a mini Kukui, so that would complement Summer Steven or a physical striker very well. And besides that, on her 3-5 grid, her 1-5 grid gets NPRs and whatnot, but her 3-5 grid gets Fierce Type 4, which is really good. It's a means of having a healing burst, so you wouldn't require Glacia to have a potion support, because even as a side partner, she still gets chipped pretty hard by sinks and AoE damages, so she really appreciates this style for tanking, and with this overall you get a really solid utility tank for her general role. But if you really want to, there is some really juicy tiles on the bottom left of her grid. There are some utility tanking tiles for Hail. You can go for Healing Hail, which also stacks on top of Regeneration, so you will get a 12% HP every turn, so that will give her some very solid recovery, give her some defense, very much needed defense for her, and Ice Shell. Ice Shell is a new type. It's a new passive. It's the opposite to Sand Screen. It was defense by 50%, so with these two things, you have an extremely solid partner for Summer Steven, for example. Summer Steven brings Permanent Hail, activates type skills alongside Glacia, so you get a plus 60 HP, and when all these things stack on top of each other, you can get more defense. Solidly, Glacia can start tanking really good, like almost 200 defense. This is like Phoebe levels of defense, augmented by Ice Shell. Like, you get an extremely solid physical tank. She will still be squishy on the special end, but as a physical tank alongside Summer Steven, she does a really good job. But you could also go grab First Aid 4 for more tanking, and also Team Tighten Up. Just Team Toughen Up, sorry. This boosts defense by 1 stage. It has a 50% chance of proccing whenever you get hit, and that would give Glacia a passive means of boosting her defense when the battle starts, without having to depend on Fortuitous's chances. So this here will make a really, really good Hail tank for Summer Steven. Please remember that you need a Hail for Glacia to tank, because she depends on Healing Hail and Ice Shell to mitigate her poor bulk. So if you are not using Summer Steven, please don't tank with Glacia, you will die. Something else fun that you can do with Glacia is go for Invigorating Hail and all this special attack. With Summer Steven, she would also benefit from his Ice Strike type skill. It would give her plus 30 special attack. And after the Mega Evolution, you would get a really chunky special attack stat. So you can buff Frostbreath a little bit more. And Frostbreath is a somewhat weak move, but when boosted by Invigorating Hail and the special attack, you would have to compete with Force Sync with Summer Steven. But if you set it up, Glacia can actually chip damage things really good. I'm not saying that she will become a monster, but she can do chip damage, which can allow for Summer Steven to finish the job. So it's a nice role. You can also play for this, for a more offensive Glacia, which is honestly something I never thought I would say. But overall, her Grid does everything she needs to do. Ignore Ice Beam. This thing is garbage. Never use Ice Beam. It's really bad compared to Frostbreath. You also get you even get Frostbreath MGR9, so you get a guaranteed recharge for your gauge. But and also it's also worse than Powder Snow for spamming. You can also get Unflappable to prevent flinching, but if Glacia is tanking, she won't really have room for it. Something about Glacia's Grid is that all her tiles are super costly. Like, look at this cost for Powder Snow. Like, what? 4 cost. It's hard to feed everything you want on Glacia. Like, you could maybe do something like this, but Team Toughen Up is a much better tile for tanking. I don't think Unflappable. You don't really have the energy to go for Unflappable, unfortunately. But yeah, overall, very solid grid. It does everything Glacia could possibly want, and then some. If you partner her with Summer Steven or Candice, so you're crazy, I guess, then she does a really good job tanking. So yeah, it's a really good grid. I like it. Here's one people weren't expecting, the Fantina grid. Rest in peace, Phoebe, but it is a spoopy mount after all, I'm gonna then have to get it. So, Fantina got spoiled a lot on her grid. She has some really neat multipliers, but don't be misled. Mismagius on a base has decent special attack, but the thing about Fantina is that her damage is really bad, because her only name multiplier is Bullbuster 4. This works like a reverse eruption in that the more HP the target has, the more damage you will deal. So under ideal circumstances, you always want Fantina to deal the first hit in the battle to make the most out of Bullbuster 4. But if you have a Fantina base, Shadow Ball's base power is really low. It's below 100 for a 3-bar move. That is honestly pathetic. And she cannot deal good damage, given her innate multipliers, but her grid fixes that, so that's great. Besides that, she has really low defenses. I am going to make a point for this, because I've used Fantina in the past, and any meaningfully strong physical sync just obliterates her. Like, even if you don't give her defensive buffs, she just cannot tank syncs, so you really need some form of defensive support or recovery for her, otherwise she will get blown wide open by AoEs, by sync damage. Physical sync damage in particular is very bad for Fantina. Her kit is somewhat bland for a striker. Ominous Wind is omni buffing, but it's such a low chance of happening that you can really depend on this. She kind of works like a Borg in a sense. You also got buffing for special attack. Dance With Me is really fun. It increases critical hit rate by 1 stage, but it also increases the move gauge by 3. So one of my favorite synergies with Fantina is pairing her with expensive move like a Light Screen or Reflect, and when you use Dance With Me, you recharge your move gauge right back up. So that is something really fun you can do. And with this and her speed, she's actually a really good gauge generator. She's really fast. I wouldn't hesitate to give her Fast Track 2 as a lucky skill to maintain speed. She is a great gauge battery. As well as that, very bland. But if you look at her grid, she finally gets some tools to augment her offense. Something I would do is go for Dance With Me and Pure Fresh, just to give you more gauge on an emergency. More bulk, Critical Strike 2 of course, great multiplier. And give her more defense, to be honest. Like, I normally never go for stats, but in Fantina's case, she's so fragile, she's going to get obliterated because her HP is so low. She really appreciates having extra bulk to be able to tank sinks, so Your supports can actually focus on restoring health on themselves instead of Fantina. And you can also go for honor roll tiles. I am going for this because it's a little hard to go for anything else on her from this side of her grid. You could go for more special attack, but as I mentioned earlier, Fantina really benefits from attacking first. She wants to attack the target first. So with honor roll tiles, she will be becoming a Borg in a sense, that where she would have great chances of lowering the special defense and let the subsequent attacks deal more damage. So this is something for you can do, but it's still a little gimmicky. If you want to go for max power on Fantina, you could do something like this. Yeah, give her more special attack, and this way you get max multipliers for Fantina, and she would deal solid damage, decent, nothing crazy, but still decent. But she would need offensive support because she cannot max her crit rate on her own without Dance With Me MP Refresh, so you have to pair her with Torchic, Sabrina, or Lyra to maximize her offense, let her buff quickly, because she's kind of like Kindra in that she's so slow at buffing. She needs help with it if you want to get a quick battle. And outside of that, you could do gimmicky things with Ominous Wind, but not sure. You could also go for Critical Will 6 if you don't have a special defense buffer. This would let her tank special sinks very well, because she's basically guaranteed to raise her special defense when she lands a crit. And she raises her crit, so yeah, that is a solid synergy right there. Overall, a little bland for my taste. It's just a straight damage, but you get MGRs, and this does just about enough for Fantina to give her more utility, so decent. Now let's cover the new sync pairs for the Halloween event. We got Hilbert and Mightyena. I bet this surprised everybody. I wasn't expecting Hilbert to be a closeted furry, but it is 2020, anything can happen. So, Mightyena, I will be direct. This thing is amazing, phenomenal. Pull this now. This is when you get a chance, you have to pull this unit because this is Haxorus on steroids. So, for Hilbert, we got a really beefy HP stat. Obviously, this is to complement Double Edge. Man, we got a lot of recoil units this batch. He has decent attack, cannot complain. Mediocre defenses, but they are mitigated by the fact he has a really high HP and decent speed. So, Hilbert's kid spams very expensive moves. We got Crunch and Double Edge, both are 3-bar moves, and Double Edge is the focus of his kid. This thing is insanely strong. He's so potent. Like at 1-5, it's still really good. Like this base power competes with Blastborn, and the reason is that normal time moves are not supposed to deal super effective damage, so they are compensated with higher base power. But for Hilbert, he gets Dark Shift as a passive, and it turns Double Edge into a dark type move, so you can deal super effective damage with this and just basically explode about everything. And there are ways to mitigate his recoil that we will talk about in a bit. Besides that, we got Carrion. Carrion is one of the best passives in the game, which only Iris has. And this thing raises attack whenever you KO or one of your party members falls in battle. So you get a little bit of passive attack buff whenever a KO occurs. And you get a Spur on. If you perform a denial, you get 4 bars for your gauge whenever you kill something. So, like, Hilbert is whole deal is exploding things with Double Edge and keep exploding things with Double Edge. And his grid sets that up very nicely. So let's look at his options. At 1-5, you get MGRs, MPRs, the usual, and you also get ramming speed. So this thing alone is like enough to make him a monster. Like, I can do wonderful things with it. Use this on his base kid. Like, this is a criminally good grid for 1-5. It reminds me a lot of Summer Steven. You get like literally everything you could want without pushing too hard for complete monster. So for that fact, ramming speed increases your power when you raise your speed. By the way, his turn move does that. He sharply raises speed, radically raises speed if you have a status condition, which is never useful because you are not going to tank with Hilbert, especially because his turn move lowers his defenses, so he's really fragile. And it also has a Dire Heal Plus integrated, so his turn move and with a carry on, you just get all your buffs. Like, he's a self-sufficient striker. He's really good. And then we go for the Double Edge spam. So, something about Hilbert is that unlike other recoil users, he doesn't have a lot of recovery. At 3-5 he gets Fear State 4, but honestly, even with it, it's not enough. You have to pair him with a Skyla or an intensive potion support so he can keep spamming Double Edge, because You at the very least get a Stanfa style. This lowers them recoil tag by 50%, and Double Edge has a 25 recoil tag, if I recall correctly. Yeah, so that would lower the recoil from that to 12.5%, a lot more manageable. And if you pull hard for Hilbert, you can stop at 2-5. Like 2-5 grid is already phenomenal. Because we get a few augmentations for his power, we can go for Insult to Injury, which is an additional multiplier which increases the power of Hilbert's attacks when you lower the defense on an enemy, and defense drops in this game are extremely powerful. I don't think people realize how potent Kukui and Nanu are as units, because most enemies in this game barely have any resistance to defense drops. Like most center enemies on Battle Villa have like Train Body 3, which barely mitigates the defense reduction, and the sides never have any meaningful defense reduction resistance. So anytime you drop the defense on an enemy, it's sort of like giving your striker an extra X attack. And the fact that he gets a multiplier when you drop defense, when it's already so powerful, like dude, if you do Hilbert alongside Skyla and Kukui, like this thing just explodes anything. He will one-hit your all enemies with Double Edge. It's an incredibly potent unit when set up right. And besides that, at 2-5 you also get an additional Stanfa style. It makes Double Edge much more bearable. And I think that's about everything you want from his grid. Haymaker, I mean, it's okay, but you can Singnook with better units. At 3-5, you don't really get anything meaningful. Like, you get a First Aid 4, but it's so far off the way, you cannot really grab it without sacrificing one of your multipliers. See, like, I would have to sacrifice, I don't know, like, Double Edge MGR, so like not even that. I have to sack a Stanfast, which dude, I would never do that. Even if I had a 3-5 Hilbert, I would still do this grid. Like having two multipliers on a powerful move like Double Edge, it's almost like using a sync every turn. It's insanely powerful. So yeah, Hilbert overall is an extremely strong unit. If you go for 1-5, you get a very solid striker. 2-5 is insanely powerful. 3-5 gets more tools, but nothing significant. Like 3-5, worthless. First Aid 4, too expensive. I don't know. This thing is amazing. Pull Hilbert, this thing is phenomenal. Alright, next in the chopping block we have Acerola and Mimikyu, a highly anticipated unit, and I feel they botched it. So I am not going to discuss this too in depth because overall I feel that she's a worse Morty. But if you like Mimikyu, then by all means please feel free to pull for your favorites. Remember, there is no meta in this game, only favorites, pull your favs. So, for Mimikyu, it's a tech unit. We got a solid defensive and offensive kit. Like, not in a spectacular. All of these stats are worse than what Volkner has, for example. But you get those solid defenses. You can work with this. HP is okay. Attack is okay. So, the thing about Mimikyu is that it has a hidden passive. I'm not sure why it's not displayed here. But, like in the main games, the first instance of damage that Mimikyu receives is nullified, which is bad for this game because you hit so much damage through the course of an extended battle, like a boss hole in Battle Villa, that it's not really worth thinking about. Either way, you can do that. Her kid is damage oriented. You get Shadow Claw, it's a plus crit move, so it has increased chances of landing critical hits. So a +2 critical hit rate, the Acerola already has guaranteed chances of critting with Shadow Claw, although it's very low base power, so I wouldn't look at this for offense. Then we go Shadow Sneak. It's a fast move, 90 base power, still somewhat mediocre, especially compared to Phantom Force. So Phantom Force, if you're not familiar with Morty, it makes you invisible for a short period of time. It prevents enemies from attacking you, and when you break this stance, then you engage your damage, and it's incredibly potent. Like at 1-5, it's about as powerful as some 4-bar moves. Like, yeah, 160 base power. The problem is that it's a quick move, so you are limited to 3 uses unless you get MP refreshes. So it's not that easy to spam. So this really reminds me of Morty in a lot of ways, especially because of Phantom Force. Like, that gives Morty direct competition. But Acerola's offensive stats are far worse than what Morty can do. Her trainer move is whatever. You can raise your attack so you got some self-sufficiency. Before your disguise breaks, you can raise your critical hit rate by 1 stage, so it's not that potent. And in Buster form, you get defenses instead to help you tank, because if you got hit by damage, it means you're probably tanking with Acerola, which she's perfectly capable of doing if you're spamming Phantom Force. Like if you hide yourself and then avoid damage, you can denial the next attack and keep this chain of Phantom Forces going to prevent enemies from attacking you altogether. So it's an interesting move, but with Acerola's base attack, oh man, like this is not going to deal that much damage. Then we got her passives. Critical Confuse, it'll confuse targets when you land a critical hit. The fact that she has Shadow Claw plus the critical hit rate boosting from her train move means that she can somewhat reliably confuse the targets. But here's the thing about techs that depend on a condition to deal damage. Usually, if you're wasting time applying the condition, you are not dealing the full potential of your power, so you have to partner them with another tech who can apply the status. In this case, it will have to be Will, because he has Confuse Ray and his reliable confusion applications. So that will help you, because in your grid you get some asteroids for confusion. And Opportunistic 9, it lowers defense if against a confused opponent. Again, this is not going to be enough for the fact that you want to deal powerful blows with Phantom Force. So I think the best way to play Acerola is alongside a confusion user and put all your bets on Phantom Force. At 1-5, you get Fuzzy Strike. This complements her Sync as a tech. It increases in power under a condition. In this case, it's the Confusion status, so you can further augment it and it becomes super potent. I am not gonna lie, her Sync is potent, but that's nothing new for a tech. So I feel I'm being too mean about Acerola, but honestly, I'm not impressed by this. They botched her pretty hard. Besides that, you got Power Flux 5, that's a multiplier confusion synergy to complement this Satu set that I was talking about. And Amped Up 1, which is Olivia, is passive. It increases speed when you land a critical hit, so you wouldn't really need a speed support. But her speed is very high, so it's not like she's going to be an insane gauge battery if you go for that. At the very minimum, you always go for Fuzzy Strike on Acerola's grid. Everything else is somewhat disappointing. You get another Confusion Synergy tile, but at this point, if you have the 3-5 grid, you totally go for a Phantom Force and Pure Fresh. Like, that's her whole deal for existing. And I guess Shadow Snake and PR. You kind of have to go for your fast moves because everything else is relatively weak. You cannot go for full asteroids. Yeah, this is too far off the way. I don't know. Stop Healing Yourself 5 is a unique passive to 3-5 Acerola. Yeah, it's 3-5 only. It increases the chances of the target hitting itself in confusion. If the target doesn't have any confusion resistance, it forces the target to have a 75% chance of hitting themselves, which is nice. It prevents damage, so I guess there's some utility behind it, but I don't know. She's awkward. Like, this is a strange tanking unit that depends on Phantom Force to avoid damage, because her defenses are not that solid. She would still need help with recovery and whatnot. And if I were doing that gimmick, I would prefer Morty, because he not only gets Blind Spot, he can also Sing Nuke, his base attack is way higher, he is more self-sufficient with Bobs, you get Dire Hit Plus, and you can also sharply raise your attack and evasion to avoid damage. It's okay. Like, this would be a skippable unit for me, but I will try to pull for Acerola because she's cute. I like Mimikyu, I don't know. Overall, I'm not impressed. Alright, and finally we have a story unit, a free-to-play sync pair, Molayne and Alolan Dugtrio. It's a Steel-type striker, and I don't have any pretty graphics for this, so we will just have to awkwardly stare at his eyes for a while. But he is like a baby Steven. Let's see, we have Metal Claw, it has a chance of raising attack, and it's a 1-bar move, so it's somewhat spammy if you are running into gauge issues. Then we have X attack, so you can raise your attack, you get Iron Head, and Bend but don't break, it increases defenses, and sharply raises speed. So this reminds me of Steven, like his base skill. Like, you don't get any critical hit rate, you need crit support, and you get Iron Head as your spammable move. It's a lower base power than Shadow Ball, but it has a chance of flinching, so that gives Molayne some utility to prevent strong attacks from happening. Although it can be annoying for denials if you fail to KO your enemy. Either way, The problem with Molayne for the most part are his stats. He has decent attack, a very decent speed, like he can maintain gauge very well, especially because Metal Claw is so spammable, so you can use it to recover gauge for another round. But his defenses are atrocious, 400 with these defenses, he needs defense support. Unlike Fantina, who can survive sinks without having to depend on defense support, Molayne will flat out get obliterated. Like, this HP is one of the lowest in the game. I don't know the exact stats for every single pair, but I have a hunch that this is the lowest HP stat in the game. I haven't seen something so atrocious in a while, and it will be hard to keep him alive. But here's the thing, as a free-to-play unit, he doesn't have any roundabout issues about dealing damage. Like, say, Iris needs Confusion for good damage, Corina lowers her defenses, like, Molayne is as straightforward as it gets. You attack with Iron Head and you get your results. You get your attack, and that is so hard to ask for free-to-play simpers. It's kind of insane. And that's what I like about Molayne. His passives are wordless. Nothing that can be useful in a regular encounter. So here's the thing to consider about Molayne. He's not amazing, he's just a free-to-play simper, but he will get a grid someday. And when that happens, he could be a lot more useful, because as a free-to-play unit, he has to get a grid. So there's something to keep that in mind. Like, if you have Steven, there is no reason to ever use Molayne, and honestly, I think Aegislash and Wickstrom are better as a striker, but he's solid, can't complain. He generates gauge, deals damage, good enough for me. So I think we are done with all the simpers in this Datamine. Yeah, and man, this turned out to be a much longer video than I was expecting, but I hope you had fun if you watched to the end of this. Thank you so much for your support, and see you next time.